Before we start working on different ways in which we can tweak our results or data set, let us insert a couple of new records into our book data, our book table. Now, the reason we are inserting the first record is because I want to show you how to insert a character value that has an apostrophe or a single quote within that character value. Let me show you what I mean. First, let's print out our book table, and we just print out all the records. Right. So now, if we look at our author's first name and even the last name, we'd see that this, perhaps I could say typical name. There is no name that has an apostrophe, and by that I mean a name like, let's say, McBride. By now we're very familiar, and perhaps I could claim that we are expert in inserting string characters into a table or into the tables we've created. And we know that with string characters, we have to put those in quotes. So we open the quotes, we have the string character, and then we close the quote. Now, when we have a name like McBride that has a quote or an apostrophe between the name, how do we represent that? Now, your first instinct would want to do something like this. So you would want to have McBride, because McBride is the full name, so you want to have McBride in quotes. But then there is another quote here, and the way SQL we interpret this is that we have MC, which is one string, and it's going to assume that bride is a separate string, and perhaps there's a need for another quote, and I mean first a comma and then another single quote to separate these two values, or yeah, these two character values. So how do we solve this problem? And what we'll do first is, why don't we try and actually insert some record, just a record into our books table. And what we want to insert is, let's say, let's insert into books. And what we want is just the author first name and maybe the author last name. So that's all the record we want to insert. And the values would be, and let's say, so our first name, let's say our first name is Peter, okay? So we'll have Peter in quotes. And then the second value now is McBride. So we open our quote and we'll just write McBride, just assuming that, this will be the way to do it, okay? When we close this, and let's run this. So when we run this, we have the error and it says unclosed quotation mark after the character string. So what it's telling us is that after this character string, there is an unclosed, because again, it's assuming that this is one character and bride is another character, and we need to close this. So the way to solve this problem is, all we need to do is we just insert another single quote right where we have that apostrophe or a single quote. So now we have two single quotes. Now this is not a, we shouldn't look at this as a double quote. It's two, we want two single quotes. And by doing this, it now tells SQL that, this is just this, and we'll get into wildcards much later, and I'll tell you about how wildcards work. But essentially, this would then allow us, instead of having, it's going to represent this with just one apostrophe. So let's go ahead and run this, and it says one row affected. And when we print out our table, and it will be the last record. Now we see that we have Mac apostrophe, or the single quote, bride, which is what we were trying to achieve in the first place. So this is the record that we want to insert, and this is just one record. We have the author's name, the author's last name, the title, year release, genre, pages, available copies, reviews as well as the gender. And the first insert is really just pointing out the error because here we have the title, the title of the book is The Orphan Master's Son. So we have an apostrophe in this title. And if we try to insert that by just opening our quote, write the orphans, and we have the apostrophe, and then just closing it, this would not work because again, SQL will think that the orphan is one character and S son should be another character. So it will expect a comma and an open quote right before the smaller, the lowercase s. So the correct way to, or the way we'll be able to insert that record is by inserting this one, does the second query. And here we have our double or two single quotes in between orphan and s. So just copy this and we can paste it on into our SQL server. Okay, so I've copied that and I'm just gonna run this. And when we select our books, so right now we're just gonna bring this up. So we have the new record that we inserted. We have Adam Johnson, the orphan's son, and it's released 2012. Trailer, 480 pages. And by the way, yes, all of those books are real, and some of the information I posted are also accurate. And I have myself read a few of those books, but I did tweak some of the information just so it makes sense for our purpose, especially once we start working with aggregate functions. So the reviews and the number of available copies and the pages may or may not be exactly accurate. Once you've inserted the first record, go ahead and insert the second record. And the reason why we're inserting this record is to, I'll be showing you much later when we talk about wildcards, because the characters or the record we're inserting does have it has what we call a wildcard, and that's the percentage sign. So we'll talk much about that once we get to wildcards. But for now, just copy this. If you want to type it out, you can, but you can just also copy this query and insert it into our books table. Okay, so I'll just copy that and I will execute. And when we run our table, our books table, we have our second book inserted. So we have Jeffrey Warren, and the name of the book is Meditation for Fidgety Skeptics, 10% up here. Now, when you run it, you might have some of the title blocked off, not blocked off, but you just need to extend, just stretch this out. Just move your mouse and then you stretch it out.